Coach, thank you so much for being here. It's a huge honor and privilege to all of us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's the honor is mine.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, how are you?
I'm doing well. We're just waiting things out with the pandemic, and I'm with my family, and everybody's healthy, and so I can't complain. We're doing as well as possible.
Okay, great, good to hear that. Okay, first question: why The Splendid and the Wild?
I'm sorry. Why is what?
The book, The Splendid and the Wild.
Oh. Yeah, I like World War II history, and I like reading about good leaders. And Winston Churchill was obviously an amazing leader. And the book was really fun to read because it was it reads like a novel, but it's actually nonfiction. But the writer did a really good job with it, and it's all taken from diaries from during World War II, actual diaries. So it's really fascinating, and I highly recommend the book.
Great, thank you. We decided to ask you that question because in this period, everybody talks about The Last Dance. Ask him about The Last Dance, ask him about The Last Dance. So we thought it could be a nice idea. Coach, you had a great chance to play for for the best coaches ever in the game, such as Greg Popovich, definitely, Phil Jackson, Lenny Wilkins, and also your Arizona College coach, Lute Olson. Could you please tell us what did you, let's say, had a chance to steal from them, and after on to apply into your philosophy right
Sure.
now?
Yeah,
it was a great experience.
Yeah. So I think the best advice that I got from all of those coaches was to be myself. That I had to be myself. I couldn't pretend to be somebody else, but who I am has been shaped by the people who I've been around and who have coached me, and obviously my family, my parents, and so I was really influenced heavily by all those coaches you mentioned, and they were all very different. I think the one thing that unites them all is they all had a big presence. There was a respect for them from all the players. You knew that they knew what they were talking about, so they knew basketball, but they had respect from the players because they offered respect to the players, almost like being a good parent. You just didn't want to let those coaches down. And so I always felt that from my coaches, and I wanted to provide that to my own team. And then what I took basketball wise was just different things that I felt were appropriate for our team. So our offense is really some of it is from the triangle in Chicago, some of it is from San Antonio. The weak and the strong motion actions that Greg Popovich likes. And then some of it has just evolved because of our talent. But the drill work that I use in practice, it comes from those coaches because that's how I learned. So we open up every day with drills that I ran for Lute Olson, that I learned under Greg Popovich and Phil Jackson. And it's all kind of built into one, because that's how I learned the game.
Thank you. And could you share with us what are the similarity between or differences between Phil Jackson and Greg Popovich, for example?
I think Greg Popovich is much more straightforward. He will tell you exactly how he feels and what he expects. Whereas Phil Jackson, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to figure out. Sometimes he leaves you alone and wants you to have to think about things and figure them out on your own. he would frequently not call timeout on purpose. Even if we were on the bad end of a run, um, he would say, I'm not calling timeout. You guys have to figure it out. He thought that was a big part of our growth. Greg Popovich was much more likely to call a timeout um, and correct things. So they were very different in their approach, but they were equally as effective. Both just tremendous, amazing coaches, and they had the ultimate respect from their players.
Great. And the freedom you give to your players, especially during timeouts, is it like your idea, or you stole it from coaches you had chance to play for?
I think it's both. I think it's my natural instinct is to ask people their opinion and empower them. And then I had coaches who did that too. Both Phil and Pop were really good about asking us as players for our thoughts on strategy, and even during games. You know, what do you guys see out there? What do you think? I'll ask that of Draymond Green all the time. You know, what do you think about the way we're guarding them right now? Sometimes he'll say, no, we're great. We just have to play harder. Sometimes he'll say, you know, let's change up the coverage. But I try to pick the right spots to ask those questions. You know, I think it's important as a leader to know when to defer and when to take charge. You know,
Yeah.
and it's best to take charge when things are going poorly, and it's best to defer when things are going well. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think you have to have that feel as a coach to when to say the right thing. You know.
Great. Talking about triangle offense you mentioned before, our question is, do we have different calls for every single situations, or is it just a matter of being great in reading those situations? How can you tell us a little bit about triangle offense?
Yeah, I think first of all, it was my favorite offense to play, and I loved the triangle. And we have used components of the triangle in Golden State, but we didn't install it completely. I didn't think it was the right offense for our team. And I think there are limits with the triangle given the three-point line and how much spacing we need today compared to 20 years ago. I think the triangle really provides spacing out to about 20 feet, and to move it out to beyond the three-point line, I think would be difficult. But with that said, I love the offense. We never made calls. It was all a series of reads and reactions, and but we practiced those reads all the time, and we practiced the skills. Tex Winter was an amazing coach with fundamentals, and we practiced those fundamentals every single day under Tex. But every pass that you made would be followed by a certain cut, a certain movement, and all five guys had to be on the same page. So, you know, for example, if I was on the wing and I threw it into the post, I knew I was going to either set a split cut with the guard at the top, or I was going to go right down the lane and set a screen for the other big guy. And if I threw it to the corner, I was going to make a V cut or a banana cut to the basket, and then we'd run a corner screen and roll. And we had a different cut and a different series of actions for every single play or every action every pass that was made, and all five guys would be on the same page. And so no matter what the defense was doing, we just had a response to it. And that's why I love the offense so much.
Great. Thank you, Coach. A couple of days ago, we had a chance to listen to Coach Georgievich, and he said, Alexander Georgievich, and he said that at the beginning of the season, he likes to give an empty piece of paper to his players where they can just write their ideas, how they want to play, what they expect from the team. Um, if you would be in the same situation, just with an empty piece of paper, what you would like to write into, in terms of, let's say, pillars you want to have in your team, how you would like to, how you create your team culture.
Yeah. So I think the team culture has to be formed by what the players feel when they come into the gym every day, and so you can't just create a culture by saying what it is and writing it down. Um, that's a good start, but then you have to follow that up with practicing those values each day. So, for example, one of our values is joy. I like to promote a lot of joy within our team. And so that's something I wrote down when I just like Sasha, when I took over the team, I wrote down, what I felt like our culture should be. It was really based on my personality, what was important to me as a coach, because that's, the team should be a reflection of my vision and my personality as a coach. And so joy was one of them. But if you want joy to be part of your culture, you can't just come in and yell at your players all day and have, practices that aren't any fun. There has to be joy in practice, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why we play music. That's why we have humor. We do birthday videos. We do a lot of fun things. We'll do all kinds of things to create this atmosphere of fun and joy, because if that's going to become part of our culture, the only way for it to happen is for them to feel that each day.
Okay, but how do you mix that joy you mentioned before with your competitive character you have? It's probably the worst thing to put together. Not so easy to handle, to manage.
Well, so competitiveness is another one of our values. We have 4 values, and the 4 values that we have for our team: joy, competitiveness, mindfulness, and compassion. And I chose those things, those values, because those are the 4 most important values to me in my life. That's how I look at the world. That's how I perform the best when I'm playing. I want to have fun. I want to compete like crazy. I want to be aware of what's happening on the floor, and I want to be compassionate to others, because it's not easy out there. It's not easy for your teammates. It's not easy for yourself. And so I think compassion is a really strong force if you use it correctly. And it would seem that all those values might not blend together,
Yeah.
but they do when you practice them each day. So while we practice joy and we laugh and we play music and we have fun, we also practice competition. And so everything we do, we keep score with. If we scrimmage, it's going to be, the score and the clock, and guys are going to be going at it and they want to win. And then if we go to our shooting drill, they're shooting against each other. And whatever we're doing, we're constantly competing against each other. And so that it's really the key to our culture, is that balance between joy and competitiveness. And we've been very lucky, because to me, Steph Curry perfectly defines that balance. He's the happiest basketball player I've ever seen. He loves playing, but he's also unbelievably competitive. And so that's the balance we're looking for.
And who would be the bigger competitor you ever play with or you coached?
Biggest competitor?
Yeah, it's a rhetoric question, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, we've all watched Michael Jordan the last month or so, and he was an amazing competitor. And I think Draymond Green immediately comes to mind. Amazing competitor. I think Michael was probably the best competitor because he never lost his ability to function within that competitive desire. He was always even if he was almost fighting with another player, that just
Yeah.
made him better. He would elevate his game, and so he would be number one. But Steph, Tim Duncan, Draymond Green, great competitors themselves. Just different kinds of competitors.
Thank you, Coach. And talking about the balance, how you manage to create appropriate balance between superstars you have and you had in your team and, let's say, the second unit or bench players. We all know that you had a great career, but as you said and as you mentioned in a couple different situations, you were a, let's say, bench player. Okay, so how do you manage that situation to have a balance between superstars and the bench players, especially we would say in this season?
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with picking your roster wisely. You have to have a balance of youth and veteran players. You have to have some internal leadership. If you have all young players, you're in big trouble. They're all going to be fighting for minutes, for shots, for money, and it gets very difficult. So picking the roster and assembling the right balance is the beginning of that. And then I think with every team, there's sort of a hierarchy, a totem pole that forms over the course of the season where players sort of fall into line. They sort of figure out where they stand with the rest of the team. And as a coach, it's important for me to understand every player's role and where that player fits in, and to value the players, especially the players at the end of the bench. They need to feel respected. They need to feel valued. And Phil Jackson really was amazing with that. He made everybody feel empowered. And one way he did that was he wasn't afraid to play anybody. He would throw anybody out there, even in a big game. And so that's something that I've tried to do also, just play a lot of people, use the bench. Now, I've been lucky because I've had a great roster. It's easier to do that when you have a great roster.
Yeah, definitely.
This year was different. Obviously, with the injuries and the young players, and it felt more like we were just surviving and developing our young talent.
Do you ask your bench players also to master a certain part of their game? For instance, you had Wennington in your team, who was a great mid-range shooter, one of the biggest mid-range big man shooters in the game. Obviously, we're not talking about your shooting characteristics from the 3 points, but is it something that you are trying to have with your players, to show them, to explain to them that this is important, to be the best in one thing?
Yeah, I think it's important to help each player understand where he can make the biggest impact, how he can help the team win. And so a guy like Bill Wennington, the reason he fit in well with that team was because of his shooting. And the triangle was a good offense for him. Bill was smart. He understood the offense very well. And he ran the pinch post really well. He'd come up to the elbow, hand back. If it wasn't there, he'd turn. And if his guy backed off, he'd shoot it. And Phil really encouraged him to shoot. And so I think it's important as a coach to encourage guys to figure out what they're good at and how they can impact the game, and to really focus on those things, and to not be afraid to show them during the game.
Okay, thank you. We received a lot of questions. I'm not sure we have enough time to read and to ask them all those questions. So you've been a great player. You are a great, amazing head coach, and you've been also a sports director and a broadcaster. Okay, if we ask you to choose 2 or 3 main things that in your opinion are the most important things in all those jobs you did, what it would be?
Well, I think communication, the ability to communicate well with the people around you, is it's definitely the key as a coach. It's definitely more important as a player than people realize. When you have a player who communicates well with the team around him, that player is much more valuable because of the internal leadership and stability it provides. And so, and then as a general manager, you're asked to communicate with the owner, with the coach, with the scouts, with the players, and so it's the number one issue, because no matter what you talk about, no matter what the topic is, if you can generate good conversation and create good ideas together with other people, then good things are going to come out of that.
Great. So communication, definitely. Thank you, Coach. Could you tell us about your idea how to manage the coaching staff? Considering in Europe we have like only 3, 4, maybe five people inside the coaching staff. In USA, in NBA, it's not like that. So how you manage so many different people inside of your coaching staff?
Yeah, it used to be like that in the NBA. Even 10 years ago, we only had probably 5, 6 assistants, but now we have probably 12, or total 12 total coaches. So it's a much bigger staff, and we have different roles, and it's important for everybody to know their role, to understand their role, and to be valued in a way that they can feel good about what they're doing. I think the main thing I've learned over the last couple of years is how important it is for the coaches to get to know the front office people, and the front office and coaching staff to work together, because it's easy for those groups to drift apart and to work separately, even though we're all trying for the same thing. So we can start heading in opposite directions, and one group doesn't know what the other is doing, and vice versa. And so one thing that we're really trying to do with the Warriors right now is to integrate the front office and the coaching staff in a more effective manner. And but for me, as the head coach, I try to have individual conversations with my coaches. I try to check in on them, on a personal level, how their families are doing, how their coaching is going, how they're feeling about their job, and just touching base with everybody periodically is very important.
Great, thank you, Coach. What do you think about about the players from Europe? It's like a general question, but how they fit into the NBA? Do you prefer maybe players from the college programs, or you would like to have rather European players who played in EuroLeague or EuroCup or on that level?
I think I don't think it's that simple to generalize like that. I think in general, though, I think the European players are very well skilled, very well coached. I'm not just saying this because I'm with a bunch of European coaches, but I think you guys have a better system for skill work. All the big guys who come over from Europe tend to be good passers and shooters, and the big guys in America are usually athletic but not great shooters, and we have to teach them how to pass and shoot, and so it's I think that's the one area that I think is usually pretty consistent. But then it's it's very different from there. There's guys like Luka Doncic or Tony Kukoc, Goran Dragic, who I drafted in Phoenix. There's guys like that who are amazing players and winners, and guys who you'd love to have. And then there's guys who come over who they're overwhelmed by the athleticism and the talent in the NBA. And so that's the key, is you have to figure out who can survive athletically, because usually the skill is there. Usually you can see the skill with the European players, but it's more a matter of can they hold their own athletically, and are they competitive, and are they winners? But that's the same thing here, with American players. We're trying to figure out the same thing with every player. Can they hold up in an NBA game with all the distraction, all the athleticism, all the criticism and judgment, and it's not an easy job.
No, thank you. And talking about European coaches, do you have a chance to watch, to follow, especially in this period, some European coaches, or do you have any coach that you like to watch, or to steal something from him?
Yeah, one of my assistants, his name is Bruce Frazier. He is constantly bringing me footage of European games. And so, because you guys have different actions, it seems like in the NBA, we kind of start all running the same thing in a lot of ways. And so I have one coach who started bringing me different actions that you guys were running. And he just, I told him, keep bringing it to me, keep bringing stuff. And to be honest, a lot of times I don't know who the coach is. I see an action. He brings me a whole bunch of stuff. I see an action. I say, let's run that. And we've had a lot of that. We've run a lot of the European stuff that I've liked. And I know there's a few NBA coaches. Quinn Snyder runs a ton of stuff that originates in Europe. And I think it's been really a good positive impact on the NBA, because again, we don't think all the same way, and so it's good to see somebody else's vision for basketball.
Thank you. And could you tell us a little bit about your playbook? Actually, how many plays or sets do you have? How you organize that part of your coaching job?
Yeah, we generally have 4 or 5 main sets that we run, and then we run variations out of those sets, so, and then maybe we have 4 or 5 variations out of each set. So, we probably run 25 or 30 things during the course of a season. And sometimes if the game is going well and we're just running, I won't make a call at all. I would prefer not to call anything. But sometimes we need to settle the game down. There's a couple of sets I like to run just to get the ball swung side to side. And the players have a couple of sets they like to maybe get Klay Thompson a shot if he hasn't gotten a shot in a while. But I think, one of the coaches I played for, Lenny Wilkins, had a great influence on me. And one of the things I learned from Lenny was it's more important to run fewer things, but run them really well, than to have a million plays and to not run them that well, And so I think that's important to to not overdo it, not to have a huge phone book, for a playbook.
Yeah. And could you share with us your idea regarding your defensive system? For instance, we received so many, basically the same questions about the fact that in the NBA, usually you are playing drop D and not aggressive, maybe edge or short edge or similar situations.
Mm-hmm.
Please tell us a little bit about the way you see the defense in NBA.
Yeah. So, everybody in the NBA is trying to force mid-range shots. There's so many great three-point shooters, and so it seems like the old days of hard hedging, are over, and so we're trying to protect the rim, and we're trying to protect against the three-point shot, and we want to create a situation where we force a player to shoot something in between off the dribble. And so a team like Milwaukee, for example, will always drop their big man right to the rim, which is what we did our first couple of years with Andrew Bogut when he was playing with us, and chase the guard over the top of the screen, because if you go under, there's too many guys who can step back and shoot the three. And what's really important is to have good size and strength on the ball. Milwaukee, Eric Bledsoe is we call him a pit bull. These guys who are they're so strong and fast, and they can fight over the screen and then challenge the shot from behind. But then you have a big 7-footer right at the rim. And so that's become a popular defense, the drop defense. And then the other thing that's become very popular, which we've done a lot of over the years, is to switch the pick and roll. If we go small with Draymond Green at center, then we're going to switch the pick and roll. And it's very personnel based, though. Switching, you're very reliant on having a guard who can switch onto a big and survive, like Klay Thompson. And you're reliant on having a big who's quick enough to stay in front of a point guard like Draymond Green. And so that's why all the NBA teams now are looking for 6'8" athletic guys who can guard multiple positions. Because switching, as you guys know, switching is really difficult to attack. The shot clock starts to wind down. You end up in an ISO, and it's not an easy defense to attack.
Okay. And talking about analytics, what would be the most important part of that segment, the most important things of analytics in the NBA?
We're really doing a lot of work right now with the time off to figure out what we want to use and what we want to throw away, because we get so much information from our analytics department. And so we have a report, before each game, a scouting report, and I'll receive 3 pages of analytics, and that can be overwhelming. It can be too much. And so we're really looking to streamline it, to cut it down to just bullet points, because with the players, if you overload them with information, their eyes are going to glaze over and they're going to forget all of it anyway. And so I think we're trying to figure out the most useful numbers for us, for our team now, And we've looked at everybody's numbers. We've looked at Milwaukee, for example. Milwaukee had by far the best defensive rating in the NBA this year, but they also gave up the most threes, which is, a little bit strange because, everybody's trying to take away the 3-point shots. So it makes you reconsider, are we spending too much time? Are other teams spending too much time worrying about the 3-point line and getting beat to the basket? And I still think even in the age of analytics, the two main things defensively are, containing penetration at the point of attack and then protecting the rim. And if you can do those two things, I think you're going to have a great defense. But the numbers, different teams play different styles, and not everybody is doing the exact same thing. So you kind of have to figure out through the analytics what works best for you.
And you said that different teams are playing different stuff. How do you prepare so many games? I mean, even here in Europe, we have so many games, but not like in the NBA in 5 or 6 months. How do you prepare your team for the next game? Do you use always the same kind of defense, or you adapt your decisions to the team you are going to play against?
Over the last 5 years, when we've had a great team and a veteran team and a lot of guys who are very smart, have been in the league for a long time, we've adapted our defenses from one night to the next, or even from during one game. For example, when we've played against Chris Paul, we want to send him left. He's just so good going right. So on the left side of the floor, we might ice him or down him. I don't know what you guys call. Yes. So within the same game, we would, we'd ice him on the left side, and then flat or send him over the top on the left side. So we're two different pick and roll coverages in the same game based on which side of the floor he's on. And but I think you have to gauge your own team. We weren't ready for that this year. With a young team, we didn't have that level of sophistication. So you have to gauge your own players and your own team as to how much you're ready to throw at them.
Okay. What was the biggest difficult for you to pass from your player career into your coaching career? And I would also would like to ask you what you would like to know as a player that you know now as a coach.
Yeah,
which is a little bit particular question.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of different ways I could answer this question, but I think what I took from when I was a player to when I started coaching is I wanted my players to feel more freedom than I felt as a player. And it wasn't necessarily the coaching that I had. I played for great coaches, but I always, as a player, I didn't want to make any mistakes, and I didn't like that feeling. I played better when I was freer and looser. And so one of the things I was very conscious of when I became a coach was I wanted our players to be loose and free. And I didn't ever want to question somebody's shot. I didn't want to say, what kind of shot are you taking? I wanted them to be firing away. But we also had that kind of team, with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. So I wanted to encourage them to be super aggressive. And so after doing that, what I had to get used to was they were both taking horrible shots. and shots that every coach that I would have had would have said, "What are you doing?" And so in my head, I could hear Phil Jackson and Greg Popovich saying, "That's a bad shot. That's a bad shot." And then, but in my mind, I'm thinking I have to let Steph Curry be Steph Curry. Otherwise, I'm taking away some of who he is. And it took me a couple of months to realize that Steph's horrible shots were still going in 40% of the time. So I really had to come to grips with that dynamic. That I think it's better as a coach. It's more important to empower the players and give them plenty of leeway and let them take some bad shots rather than to always have them thinking too much and looking over at me like, is that a bad shot? Or, I want them to be free.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, the very last question, Coach. In your opinion, what is going to be the next tendency in the NBA or even in the basketball generally speaking? Last couple of years, we would say it was a small ball with a lot of 3-point shots. In your opinion, how is it going to? What was going to be the next step in the basketball? The game of basketball?
That's a great question. That's a great question. Some people think it's going to even evolve further, and where it's like Houston this year when they traded Capella and they just put 5 3-point shooters on the floor, or at least 4, and then both Harden and Westbrook attacking the rim. I don't know that that's going to happen with the whole league, but that would be the next step in the direction we're going. We've been shooting more and more threes, and players have been widening out, more and more spacing. It's amazing watching the Last Dance and seeing the spacing. All the players are all like this,
Yeah.
Now every game is like this. It's crazy how much room there is. So, are we going to get to the point where we're just going to not even put an offensive player in the paint at all? That's what Houston is doing. But I don't really know. It's hard to predict.
And defensively, maybe respect a lot your honesty, Coach.
Yeah. Defensively, I think we're going to continue to see the switching because it's been very difficult for if you have the personnel to do it. And since more and more coaches are teaching it, and we're all looking for that type of athlete, I think you're going to see more and more switching in the NBA. Do you see a lot of switching in Europe?
Yeah, there are a lot of teams that play switching, especially in the very last seconds of the game, of the quarter, or the possess.
Yeah, makes sense.
For instance, over here we have Coach Obradovic, who runs something that is going to be run in a couple of years. So he predicts the tendency in European basketball offensively and then also defensively. He has, for instance, Jan Vesely, who plays as a 5. And I mean, you know him definitely.
Sure.
So you can switch on everything.
Right. And he can Vesely can stay in front of the point guards.
Yeah.
Well enough.
I mean, we have a lot of Turkish coaches. They can answer on your question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Coach, I have no words, actually. It's such a huge honor for all of us and privilege that my English is not so good, so I cannot describe. I don't know how to say thank you for this opportunity. It was pretty silly. Of course, I would like to say thanks to our friend Zaza Pachulia who created contact between us. So thank you again. It was such a great honor for all of us. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Your English is great, by the way. And I want to thank you guys. I've really enjoyed it, and I would do anything for Zaza. So I'm glad he set this up. So it's been a lot of fun.
Great, thank you, Coach, and all the best to you and your family.
Guys. All right, good luck to everybody. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.